She mocked his weakness, but the human showed her what strength really means. Asterisk. The detention cell hummed with an eerie blue light, casting shadows that seemed to dance across the crystalline walls. Marcus Chen pressed his back against the cold surface, trying to steady his breathing. 3 days had passed since the rescue mission went wrong, since his team was scattered across this alien world. Since he found himself a prisoner of the Netherian Empire, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. Marcus straightened, knowing what was coming. The interrogations had become routine, each one more intense than the last. The door dissolved with a shimmer, revealing his captor. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that held a subtle luminescence, like moonlight on water. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing the sharp angles of her face. Eyes were the most unsettling feature, a deep violet that seemed to see straight through him. This was Valia, the Netherian interrogator who had made it her personal mission to break him. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species but edged with disdain. "You look weaker today." Marcus managed a weak smile. "Sorry to disappoint, I've been working out." Valia circled him slowly, her movements predatory and graceful.
Your humor will not save you.
"Nor will your stubborn silence about your military installations. I've told you already. I'm an engineer, not a soldier. I fix things, not destroy them." She stopped in front of him, leaning down until her face was inches from his. "Yet, you came here armed. You came to steal from us. We came to rescue captured civilians. People who were taken during your raids on our colony ships." Valea's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her violet eyes. "Lies. Humans are conquerors, just like us. You simply lack the honesty to admit it." Marcus met her gaze steadily.
"Maybe that's where you're wrong about us."
She straightened, abruptly activating a device on her wrist. Immediately, Marcus felt a sharp pain shoot through his nervous system. He gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out. The pain intensified, but he remained silent, his jaw clenched so tight he thought it might break. After what felt like an eternity, Valea deactivated the device. Marcus slumped forward, sweat beading on his forehead, but he looked up at her with defiant eyes. "Impressive," she admitted reluctantly.
Ow.
"Most beings would be screaming by now." "Most beings haven't had to endure my ex-wife's cooking," Marcus gasped, attempting another joke despite the pain. For a fraction of a second, Valea's stern expression wavered. Then the mask was back in place. "Your pain tolerance means nothing. We have methods that will break even the strongest mind." "Right. Then why haven't you used them?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "You've had me for 3 days. If you wanted to break me, really break me, you would have done it already." Valea's hands clenched into fists. "Because I wanted to see if humans possessed any honor, any strength, worth acknowledging. And what's your verdict?" She was quiet for a long moment, studying him with those penetrating eyes. "Oh, you are ... unexpected." There was something in her tone that Marcus couldn't quite identify. Not quite respect, but no longer pure contempt either. It was the first crack in her armor he'd seen. "My people believe humans are weak," Valea continued. "Soft creatures who rely on technology because they lack the strength to survive on their own." "Maybe we are weak," Marcus said quietly, "but we're still here. Still fighting. Still hoping." "Hope is a luxury for the strong?" "No," Marcus shook his head. "Hope is what keeps the weak going when strength fails them. It's what makes us human." Valea stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable crossing her features. Then she turned toward the door. "Tomorrow's session will be different, human. I suggest you prepare yourself." As she reached the threshold, Marcus called out, "My name is Marcus, not human. Marcus." She paused without turning around. "Names are 4 equals. Prisoner." The door reformed behind her, leaving Marcus alone once again. But something had changed in that final exchange. He could feel it in the air, a shift in the dynamic between them. Tomorrow would indeed be different, though perhaps not in the way either of them expected. The next morning arrived with the gentle chiming that served as dawn on Nethes. Marcus had spent the night thinking about his interrogator, trying to understand what had passed between them during their last encounter. There had been something. In her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty that suggested she was questioning her own beliefs. When Valea entered his cell, she carried herself differently. Still proud and commanding, but without the aggressive posture of previous days. She also brought something new, a small device that projected a comfortable chair which she settled into across from him. "Today we try a different approach," she announced, her voice softer than before. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "No more torture devices? Pain has its limitations. A decided conversation might prove more ... illuminating." She activated another device, and suddenly the sterile cell was transformed. The walls displayed a breathtaking vista of Marcus's home. World-rolling green hills under a blue sky dotted with white clouds. The illusion was so perfect he could almost smell the grass. Valea said simply, "Your birth world." Marcus felt a pang of homesickness so sharp it nearly brought tears to his eyes. "How did you? We study our enemies thoroughly. Tell me about this place." For a moment Marcus wondered if this was another form of psychological manipulation, but something in her posture suggested genuine curiosity rather than interrogation tactics. "It's where I grew up," he said carefully. "Small farming community in what used to be called Nebraska. My family raised crops, lived simply. Yet you left to become an engineer among the stars. Sometimes you have to leave home to appreciate what you had there." Marcus studied her face. "What about you? Do you have a home world?" Valea seemed surprised by the question. "This is our home. Nethys has been the heart of our empire for 3,000 years. But before that, where did your people come from originally?" Shadow passed across her features. "That knowledge is restricted." Marcus nodded. "Military secret? Personal secret?" she corrected quietly. They sat in comfortable silence. For a moment, both looking at the projection of Earth's countryside, Marcus noticed that Valea seemed almost relaxed, her rigid posture softening slightly. "Tell me about human relationships," she said suddenly. "Your emotional bonds." The question caught Marcus off guard. "That's a pretty broad topic. What specifically? Do you want to know?" "Love," she said, the word sounding foreign on her lips. "Your species forms these ... attachments. They seem to make you weaker, more vulnerable." Marcus considered this carefully. "Love doesn't make us weaker. It gives us something worth being strong for." "Explain." "When I was captured, my first thought wasn't about classified information or military secrets. It was about my sister back on Mars, wondering if I'd ever see her graduate from university. It was about my team, hoping they made it to safety." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Fear, that care for others, it didn't make me more likely to break. It made me more determined to protect them by staying silent." Valea listened intently, her violet eyes focused on every word. "Among my people, emotional attachments are seen as weakness, distractions from duty. That sounds lonely." "Loneliness is a human concept, is it?" Marcus asked gently. "Because right now, sitting here talking with me, you seem less alone than you did yesterday." For the first time since he'd known her, Valea looked uncertain. Her composed facade wavered, revealing something vulnerable underneath. "I shouldn't be having this conversation," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because ... She stood abruptly, pacing to the far wall. "Because you're making me question things I've never questioned before." Marcus remained still, sensing that this moment was crucial. "What kinds of things?" She turned to face him, and he was startled to see genuine conflict in her eyes. "Everything. My duty, my beliefs, the rightness of this war. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe questions are the beginning of wisdom." Valea moved closer, and Marcus could see the internal struggle playing out across her features. "In my culture, there is no room for doubt. We are taught from birth that strength comes from absolute certainty. But you're starting to doubt." "Anyway, yes," she admitted, the word barely audible, "and it terrifies me." Without thinking, Marcus reached out and gently touched her hand. The contact was electric literally and figuratively. Valea's skin was warm and seemed to pulse. With a subtle energy, she didn't pull away. "Fear isn't always a bad thing," Marcus said softly. Sometimes it means you're about to discover something important. They stood there for a long moment, hands touching, two beings from different worlds, sharing a connection that neither fully understood. Then Valea pulled away, the spell broken. "I must go," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Will you come back tomorrow?" She paused at the door, looking back at him with an expression he couldn't read. "I don't know. I honestly don't know." Valea didn't come the next day. Instead, Marcus was visited by a hulking guard named Krell. His idea of interrogation involved more physical persuasion and less conversation. By the time the session ended, Marcus was battered and bruised, but his resolve remained unbroken. It was on the second day of Valea's absence that Marcus understood something was wrong. The entire detention facility seemed on edge, with guards moving with unusual urgency and hushed conversations echoing through the corridors. On the third day, she finally returned. Marcus barely recognized her. The composed, elegant interrogator had been replaced by someone who looked as though she hadn't slept in days. Her silver hair was disheveled, her usual pristine uniform wrinkled. Most telling of all, her violet eyes held a haunted quality that spoke of internal turmoil. "You look terrible," Marcus said gently. Valea let out a sound that might have been laughter or might have been a sob. "I've been summoned before the High Council. Because of me. Because of us." She moved to the center of the cell, her movements agitated. "They know about our conversations. About the connection that's formed between us." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. What kind of connection? She looked at him then, and he saw the truth in her eyes before she spoke it. The kind that violates every protocol of my people. It's a kind that could get us both executed. The weight of her words settled between them like a physical presence. Marcus had known their relationship was developing beyond interrogator and prisoner, but he hadn't fully grasped the danger it posed. What did the council say? "They've given me one final chance to prove my loyalty, to demonstrate that I haven't been compromised by human influence." Marcus didn't like the way she said that last part.
What do they want you to do?
Valea activated a device, and the cell walls became transparent. Beyond them, Marcus could see into an adjacent chamber where three figures waited. Two were Netherians he didn't recognize, their faces stern and unforgiving. The third figure made his blood run cold. It was Captain Rodriguez, his commanding officer from the rescue mission. Gosh, she was beaten, barely conscious, suspended in some kind of energy field that held her upright. "No," Marcus breathed. "Counselor Zethok has designed a test," Valea said, her voice hollow. "I am to execute your superior officer while you watch. If I can do this without hesitation, it will prove that my loyalty to the Empire remains absolute. And if you can't, then we both die." Marcus stared at Rodriguez, seeing the woman who had trained him, who had trusted him with this mission, who had 3 children waiting for her back home. Then he looked at Valea, seeing the anguish in her features as she struggled with an impossible choice. "There has to be another way," he said. "There isn't." Valea moved to the weapon cabinet that had materialized in the wall. "The council chambers are watching. Every moment of hesitation is being analyzed, cataloged as evidence of my betrayal." Marcus watched her hands shake as she reached for the energy weapon. "Then don't hesitate." She spun around, staring at him in shock. "What? You heard me? Do it quickly, cleanly. Don't give them any reason to doubt your loyalty." "I can't." "Yes, you can." Marcus moved as close to the barrier as possible. "Because if you don't, Rodriguez dies anyway, and then they kill us. Both. At least this way, one of us survives." Actual tears began to flow down Valea's luminescent cheeks. "How can you ask me to do this?" "Because I love you." The words hung in the air between them, naked and honest and terrifying. Valea's weapon clattered to the floor as she stared at him in amazement. "You can't love me," she whispered. "I'm your enemy. I've tortured you, imprisoned you. You've also shown me kindness, curiosity. You've let me see who you really are beneath all that armor." Marcus pressed his palm against the barrier. "I love the woman who questions everything she's been taught, who risks her life to have honest conversations with a prisoner, who cries at the thought of senseless violence." Valea placed her own hand against the barrier, matching his gesture. If I do this thing, how can you ever forgive me? Because I understand the choice you're facing, because I know that whatever you do, you'll do it to save as many people as possible. In the adjacent chamber, one of the Netherian observers was growing impatient. A voice echoed through the facility, speaking in the musical but harsh tones of the alien language. "They're demanding I proceed," Valea translated. Marcus looked one more time at Rodriguez, then back at the woman he had impossibly fallen in love with, then proceed. "But know that whatever happens next, you're not alone anymore. You'll always have my love, and that's something they can never take away from either of us." The weapon never fired. Instead, Valea made a choice that surprised everyone, including herself. She turned toward the observation chamber and spoke in clear, defiant tones in her own language. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but her posture told him everything he needed to know. She was refusing. The response was immediate and violent. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility as security forces mobilized. The barrier between Marcus and Valea dissolved, and she rushed. "To him, I can't do it," she said, pulling him toward the weapon cabinet. "I won't become the monster they want me to be. What did you tell them? That love isn't weakness, that compassion isn't betrayal. Maybe the humans have something we Netherians have forgotten." She pressed an energy pistol into his hands, "And that I choose love over fear." The cell door exploded inward as Netherian guards poured through. Marcus and Valea moved as one, taking cover behind the projected furniture. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was now fighting alongside his former captor against her own people. The ventilation shaft Valea called out between energy blasts, 3 meters up behind you. Marcus glanced back and saw the opening she meant. "What about Rodriguez?" "I'll get her. You clear a path to the shaft." They moved with surprising coordination for two people who had been enemies days before. Marcus provided covering fire while Valea used her security codes to free Rodriguez from the energy restraints. The captain was barely conscious but aware enough to recognize the situation. "Chen," she mumbled. "What the hell? Long story?" "Captain, can you move?" With help, Valea supported Rodriguez while Marcus continued to hold off the guards. His weapon was running low on power, and more reinforcements were arriving every second. "Go," Valea shouted. "I'll hold them off." "Not without you," Marcus replied firmly. She looked at him with amazement and something that might have been gratitude. Together then, they fought their way to the ventilation shaft, with Valea's intimate knowledge of the facility proving invaluable. She guided them through a maze of maintenance tunnels and service corridors, avoiding the main security checkpoints. "Where are we going?" Rodriguez asked, her strength gradually returning. "The old mining tunnels," Valea explained. "They run beneath the facility and connect to the crystal caves. From there, we might be able to reach the surface." "Might. Caves are dangerous, unstable. Most who enter never return." Marcus looked at her with concern. "Then why?" "'Cause it's our only chance. And because... double quotes." She paused, meeting his eyes. "'Cause I'd rather die free with you than live as a slave to their hatred." They emerged from the tunnels into a vast underground chamber filled with towering crystal formations that glowed with their own inner light. The beauty was breathtaking, but Marcus could sense the danger Valea had mentioned. The crystals hummed with energy, and the very air seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. "Stay close," Valea warned. "The crystals are sensitive to emotional disturbance. Strong feelings can cause them to resonate and potentially collapse the entire cavern." They began making their way carefully through the crystal forest, supporting Rodriguez between them. The going was slow, but they were making progress toward what Valea claimed was an exit to the surface. It was then that they heard the pursuit behind them. "They've found the tunnel entrance," Rodriguez observed grimly. Marcus looked at Valea. "How much farther to the exit?" "Half a kilometer? But they'll catch us long before we reach it." "Not if we split up," Marcus suggested. "I'll draw them off. Give you time to get Rodriguez to safety." No." Valea's voice was firm. "We stay together." "It's the logical choice." "Logic isn't what brought us this far," she interrupted. "Trust is. Hope is. love is. Marcus felt his heart swell at her words. Then we make our stand together. They found a defensible position among the larger crystal formations and prepared for the final confrontation. As the Netherian security forces entered the cavern, Marcus found himself thinking about the journey that had brought him to this point. A week ago, he had been a prisoner facing interrogation and possible death. Now he was fighting for his life. Alongside the woman he loved, protecting not just their freedom but the possibility of something greater. Bridge between their worlds built on understanding rather than conquest. Whatever happens, Valea said softly, I want you to know that you've changed me. Made me better than I was. You did the same for me, Marcus replied. The first energy blasts lit up the cavern as the battle began. The crystal cavern erupted into chaos, as energy weapons discharged in brilliant flashes of light. Marcus and Valea fought back to back, their movements synchronized as if they'd been partners for years rather than days. Rodriguez, though still weak, provided what support she could from their defensive position. There's too many of them, Rodriguez called out during a brief lull in the fighting. Marcus could see she was right. At least 24 Netherian soldiers had followed them into the cavern, and more were arriving every minute. Their position was strong, but their ammunition was limited. The crystals, Vela said suddenly. Marcus, remember what I said about emotional disturbance? You said strong feelings could cause them to resonate and collapse the cavern. Not exactly helpful right now. What if we could control it? Direct the resonance. Her violet eyes were bright with desperate inspiration. These crystals are connected to the planet's core energy network. If we could create a focused emotional pulse, you're talking about bringing down the entire cave system. Not the entire system, just this section, enough to seal the tunnel behind us and stop the pursuit. Rodriguez looked between them. It sounds like a suicide mission. Not if we time it right, Valea insisted. The exit passage is reinforced with natural metal deposits. It should survive a localized collapse. Marcus studied the cavern layout, calculating distances and timing. It was incredibly risky, but their alternatives were rapidly disappearing. What do you need me to do? Valea moved to the largest crystal formation at the center of their position. Touch the crystal. Both of us, at the same time. And think about everything you feel. Love, hope, determination, fear. All of it at once. That's your plan? Think really hard at a rock? These aren't just rocks, Marcus. They're conduits. Like living. Links to the planet's consciousness. Netherian children are taught to fear them because they respond to pure emotion. Something our culture has spent centuries trying to suppress. The enemy fire was intensifying, forcing them to keep their heads down. Time was running out. Rodriguez, Marcus called. When we give the signal, run for the exit passage. Don't look back. Don't wait for us. Just run. The captain nodded grimly. Understood. Psst. Marcus and Valea placed their hands on the massive crystals simultaneously. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Crystal blazed with light, and Marcus felt a surge of connection not just to Valea, but to the entire cavern system. He could sense the flow of energy beneath Nethys, the ancient network that had powered this civilization for millennia. But more than that, he could feel Vele's emotions as clearly as his own. Her love for him burned bright and fierce, but alongside it was a deeper love for her people, for the possibility of peace, for a future where strength meant protection rather than domination. The crystal's resonance began to build, a harmonic frequency that made the entire cavern vibrate. Other crystals began to respond, their light growing brighter as the energy spread through the network. Now Valea shouted. Rodriguez sprinted toward the exit passage as Marcus and Valea maintained contact with the crystal. Soldiers, realizing what was happening, redirected their fire at the crystal formation. But it was too late. The resonance reached critical mass. The cavern shook as crystal formations began to topple, creating a chain reaction that spread throughout the chamber. Marcus and Valea ran hand in hand toward the exit, dodging falling crystal shards and chunks of ceiling behind them. The pursuing soldiers were caught in the collapse, their retreat cut off as tons of crystal and stone sealed the tunnel entrance. They made it to the exit passage just as the main collapse occurred, the reinforced tunnel protecting them from the worst of the destruction. The three of them emerged onto Nethys's surface as the sun was setting, painting the alien sky in shades of purple and gold. Spaceport, Rodriguez gasped, pointing to a structure visible in the distance. If we can reach it, ... The human rescue ships, Marcus realized. They'll still be trying to negotiate for prisoner exchanges. As they made their way across the crystalline landscape of Nethys, Valea suddenly stopped. I can't come with you, Marcus. Felt his heart sink. What do you mean? I'm a fugitive now. If I appear at the spaceport, it will only complicate the negotiations. Make it harder for your people to secure the release of other prisoners. So we find another way. There is no other way, Marcus. She cupped his face in her hands, her touch gentle and warm. But what we've started here doesn't end with us. The crystals in that cavern were connected to communication nodes throughout the Netherian Empire. When we created that resonance, we sent a message to every connected crystal on every Netherian world. What kind of message? Love is stronger than fear, that understanding is possible between our peoples, that there's another way forward besides endless war. Rodriguez, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. There will be others. Humans and Netherians who feel the same way you do. This doesn't have to be the end. Valea smiled. And Marcus saw in that expression all the strength and beauty that had first challenged his assumptions about her species. No, it's not the end. It's the beginning. She kissed him then, a kiss that tasted of hope and possibility and the promise of a future neither of them could fully imagine. When they parted, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Go, she whispered. Live. Tell them what you've learned here. Show them that their strength doesn't have to come from hatred. Marcus wanted to protest, to find some way they could stay together, but he knew she was right. Their love had already accomplished something extraordinary. It had proven that connection was possible across the vast divide of species and culture. I love you, he said simply, and I love you. Always. As Marcus and Rodriguez continued toward the spaceport, Marcus looked back once to see Valea standing silhouetted against the alien sunset. She raised her hand in farewell, and he knew that somehow, some way, they would find each other again. Their love had shown both their peoples what true strength really meant. Not the power to destroy, but the courage to understand, not the ability to conquer, but the wisdom to connect. And in that strength, there was hope for a future where the stars themselves might witness the impossible two worlds, learning to love instead of fear.